Can I share a story with you? Can I share a miracle that I saw this week? Literally, I experienced something that cannot be explained in any other way except a divine miracle, an answer to prayer. And so this is for anybody who has experienced the grief of walking through an estrangement. So I have been, for the last few years, going through an estrangement with my oldest son. It was really kind of marked in time for me with this last Christmas, because it was the second Christmas without him, and the Mother's Day was then the second Mother's Day without him. So I really realized how long this estrangement has been going on, and so I was at the end of my rope. I was at the end of my emotional capacity to hold any more sorrow, okay? Because that's what I feel like. It's been immense sorrow and grieving, and then my top three emotions are pretty much embarrassment, shame, and regret. So when I came to God 4 weeks ago, it wasn't as if I've never talked to him about this. I talk to him all the time about it, but I came to him from a spot, in a deep spot out of my brokenness. And it was a Saturday morning, and I was here at the house alone, and I was just talking to God. I was reflecting on the situation. I was ruminating on the situation with my son, and I just cried out to him, and I said, I can't carry this anymore, God. I can't take it. I can't hold it. I can't carry it. I can't fix it. I can't let it go. Dear Jesus, I can't carry this anymore. Will you please help me? And I mean, when I gave this cry to him, literally, I was sobbing. And I typically don't like to stay in any type of self-pity mode. It's not where I like to hang out. And so I start telling him, but God, you know about rejection, and you know about betrayal and hurt. It costs you your very life. And so, what I'm going through is not anywhere near what you went through on the scale of you, because it cost you your life. And so, as I kind of was relating my suffering, right, to the Lord's suffering, he met me. He came to me while I was standing in front of my refrigerator in there, and it was like he impressed upon me that he knew the sorrow that I was experiencing as a mother. And not only that, but it was very specific and unique to my role as a mother, that I could feel his compassion towards me, that he understood my plight. It was like he brought his arms down and just wrapped me in himself, and just his arms just were wings of compassion and empathy. As I'm empathizing with him, he's like, oh no, he empathized with me, okay? And it was like, with the same compassion and love that he has towards his very own mother, that was the fullness of compassion that I felt. And he met me in a moment where I would have called myself a failure as a mother. I came to him as a failure, and he wrapped his arms around me and held me and recognized my plight. and recognize my role. And so that's what I want to tell you today. If you are in an estrangement with your child, that God sees you and he hears you, and he has empathy and compassion for your role as a mother. And so that day I actually also, because another thing I was struggling with was feeling very alone in it, because when something is shameful and embarrassing, you don't talk about it a lot. I mean, I talked to a couple of my closest friends, but like, people really don't understand. If you've never walked through it, Dr. Joshua Coleman calls it the silent epidemic. And it's silent because parents are so ashamed to talk about that, because, you know, there's a lot of preconceived judgment that estrangement only happens with, like, you know, abuse. And so there's a lot of a shame that, and preconceived judgment that as parents we deal with. And so just having Jesus meet me in that spot really just solidified his love for me. But if you've never experienced it, just be thankful that you've never experienced it. But there's one who does know what it's like. And so one of the other things that I did was I decided to apply to a group for men and women who have experienced going through an estrangement. And I did my first post. So I talked about my experience and shared my feelings. And at the end of it, I wrote that I had prayed for God to send me a friend, someone who has went through something similar and that can strengthen and encourage me. And I you know, I said, if that's you, or if, you know, just please reach out. And so I didn't develop any new friendships from that role, and I actually kind of forgot about it. And so several weeks had went by, and I got a call from a dear friend of mine who was coming up to her cabin part-time. And she said, why don't you come over? And so I went over and I visited her and her friend, and she told me that they were going to the beach the next day, and that I should join them. And I thought that sounded like a great idea. And so the next day we were scheduled to meet at the beach, and on the way over, I felt like I should share my testimony. I felt like God said, share your testimony about your son. And so when I get over to the beach, and I just start explaining to my friend that where I've been, right? I've been going through an estrangement with my son the last few years, and she was extremely super empathetic. I'm sorry, I didn't know. And I said, you know, oh, I know. It's not something I talked about with a lot of people, and a lot of people don't even know what to say, you know? And so she just empathized with me, and as I start kind of sharing my story, and, you know, as I share that, I didn't talk about it because whose child cuts them off? Because that's kind of where I've been stuck at, you know? And as I say those words, I'm then directed to look at her friends, right? So this is not a woman that I've met. I didn't know her. She doesn't even live in my state. She came up to visit our mutual friend, and this mutual friend thought, oh, you guys would really get along, we should meet, which is why they invited me to go to the beach. And so I look at her face, and she just has all this emotion on her face when I said, whose son cuts them off? And she raised her hands, and I was like, you? And she was like, me. We kind of just sat in that moment, kind of looking at each other. And I just started expressing, you know, some of the feelings that I was feeling, and that, you know, I felt so alone, and how painful it was. Gosh, it's definitely the hardest thing I've ever had to walk through. And so as I was sharing, I go to at some point I mentioned my son's name. And as I mentioned it, she just breaks out in a sob and just starts crying. She's overcome. That's how. And I didn't know what was going on. Our mutual friend knew what was going on and said, Tiffany, just hold on just 1 second. She's processing some things here. And we kind of just sat there for a minute, and she tells me, you know, she has an estranged son as well. And he has the same name as your son has. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And as I sat there and we began a conversation about our struggles, we talked about the Bible study that God had given me. And then she began to testify to me of her experience, okay? So it was like I went over there to give my testimony of how God showed up in front of the refrigerator for me that day. And then she begins to share her testimony of things that she has went through with her son. And through our sharing, we both began to be mutually healed. It was like he showed up, okay? He showed up in that morning in my kitchen, and then he showed up in the form of a woman who had went through a broken situation that was just like mine. And we, through our mutual brokenness, God began to heal and show us that we are not alone. And she told me, she said, I feel so seen and so heard and so validated. And I did too. And so as we sat there and we shared about, as we were just kind of really even talking about not just our struggles, but we were talking about how divine it was. It really felt like a miracle. I don't even know that I realized it was a miracle in that moment, because I was so shocked, I guess, that out of the billions of people on the planet, okay, even before our sons were born, that God had somehow arranged this divine meeting for him to show up, to show us, his daughters, how important we were to him, and that he cares, okay? So he cares. He literally cares about our plight. He cares about you. He cares about your struggles. He cares about your pain. He cares about your grief. He cares about your sorrow. And listen, he doesn't just care about it from afar. He wants to enter into it with you. He wants to walk in side by side with you. And that's why he says, come to me, all ye who are labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So when he says, come to me, that's an invitation. He's asking to help bear the brunt of the burden that you're carrying, that I'm carrying. And when I said to him, I prayed for a friend. So he showed up in his full form that day in the kitchen. And then he showed up in the beach in flesh with a woman. Okay? I just want you guys to get this, because it was so phenomenal. Ask, seek, and find. Okay? That's what he says. He says, if you ask me, if you seek for me with all your heart, And that's where we have to be at with all our heart. God, I can't do this anymore. Please come and take it. He will enter into it with you. And I saw a miracle that day. There's no other way to explain it. There's no other way that it can be described other than a divine miracle. And so this shirt I'm wearing, y'all need Jesus. One of my friends gave me this shirt, and I don't wear it too often because I kind of feel like it has like a tone, like y'all need Jesus. Okay, I have new revelation on this shirt this morning. It's like this: y'all need Jesus, right? Like y'all, he come to him and he will bring healing to your soul. I saw it. I witnessed it. I felt it. I experienced it. And if you've prayed for a friend and maybe you don't have anybody to talk to and you're going through an estrangement, reach out to me and I'll be your friend. And Jesus is always your friend, and you can come to him at all times. He knows where you're at and he loves you.